Before we get into the video, make sure you subscribe to my channel, you know what I'm saying? Don't forget to hit the notification bell for you to be updated whenever I post a new video. And go smash the like button. And without further ado, dang, what are you waiting for? Let's get into the video! You know, I still wonder where those people actually landed, bro.
Think air travel is always safe? Think again. Here are two of the most mysterious aircraft disappearances. First, we swing back to 1944 with the disappearance of one of the fathers of the swing music genre, Glenn Miller. However, when he set off one foggy evening from London to Paris, his plane just disappeared. Some suspect he was accidentally bombed in transit, but no trace of his body or the plane was ever found. But if losing one plane is a disaster, then 6 is an absolute catastrophe. 5 military planes, known as Flight 19, set off from Fort Lauderdale to perform a routine practice bombing run, but their route took them through the legendary Bermuda Triangle. Some of their equipment failed and they needed to make an emergency landing. Naturally, a rescue plane was sent out to bring the stranded crew home, but that plane went down too. None of the 6 planes were ever found, and they and their crew were lost forever to the Bermuda Triangle.
If it ain't your time yet, it ain't your time yet.
Here's the luckiest people who survived the impossible, and the last one is probably your biggest fear. Jenna Geese was bitten by a rabid bat at the age of 15. She was rushed to the hospital with very little time left to live as there was no rabies vaccine in sight. But then, one brilliant doctor chose to put Jenna into an induced coma, hoping that her body would produce antibodies to fight the virus. It worked, and Jenna became the first person to recover from a rabies infection without a vaccine. 24-year-old Lisa Mindy got attacked by a great white shark that gripped her head and arm, dragging her underwater. However, the shark somehow miraculously lost its grip and she managed to get up to the surface to make a full recovery. And finally, Alcides and his brother Edgar worked as window washers in Manhattan when their anchors holding their platform gave way. They came crashing down 500 feet and sadly Edgar lost his life, but Alcides was found conscious sitting upright.
How do they know? Like what?
Here are some creepy cases of kids remembering their past lives. In 2000, 2-year-old James Leininger of Louisiana in the USA started repeating airplane crash on fire. He started telling his parents that during the war he'd flown a fighter plane called a Corsair. 6 months short of his 3rd birthday, he told them he'd flown his plane off a boat called a Natoma. It was the USS Natoma Bay, an escort carrier that sailed in the Pacific Ocean. In the 1950s, British couple Florence and John Pollock were driving their 2 daughters Joanna 11 and Jacqueline 6. They were involved in a crash which left both daughters dead. Years later, Florence gave birth to twin girls who mysteriously had birthmarks matching those of their deceased older sisters. A 5-year-old named Ryan from Oklahoma in the USA was obsessed with Hollywood and would frequently claim to have had a past life as a movie star. Ryan was able to accurately describe over 50 facts about the life of a 1930s actor named Martin Martin.
These scenes are priceless.
Here's 3 times when actors weren't acting. This scene in Friends shows Ross and a young boy running up the stairs. However, they decided to actually prank Rachel by throwing down a mannequin of Ross. The reaction from Rachel was completely real as she wasn't aware that was going to happen. From the show Riverdale, the actor Luke Perry very sadly passed away. And when they held the funeral for his character in the show, all the actors were genuinely showing their true emotions and crying. But before I tell you the craziest one, if you want to prank someone by changing what their messages say, then go here on my profile. This scene from Fast and Furious wasn't scripted. The Rock improvised his comeback and the reactions were real.
Hey Mia, you better hide your baby or... I'm just playing.
You better hide that big ass forehead.
I was just joking.
How do they know? Like, do they see it in their dreams or glimpse of memories or what?
A boy named Jutha was born in Thailand only a few months before his mother's brother would die in a motorcycle accident. When Jutha was 4, he suffered a serious fever, and 2 spots appeared on his arm, in the same places his deceased uncle had similarly shaped tattoos. Once he'd recovered from his illness, he started to show even more similarities to his uncle. He started calling his mom Little Noe, a nickname given to her by her late brother, and talked about having worked at Bangkok construction sites, despite never having been to the city. A woman in the American Midwest who tragically lost her first son Kevin to cancer at 14 believed that her 4th child Patrick was the reincarnation of his deceased half-brother. He was born blind in one eye and had multiple scars and birthmarks that corresponded to places where Kevin had surgery during his life. Patrick also frequently identified himself in old pictures of Kevin. In Glasgow, a boy named Cameron developed an obsession with the island of Barra, in Scotland's Outer Hebrides. He told his family that he had another set of parents who lived in Barra in a big white house called Sanderling, a place he accurately described despite never having seen it.
I I can now rest in peace.
Here's why 1% battery lasts so long on your phone. One of the reasons why your phone battery lasts longer than you'd expect at 1% is because of the way it's designed. Most phones are wired to consume less energy as the battery drains away. Automatically, some non-priority background applications will be stopped to optimize what's left of the battery. Essentially, your phone plays it safe when it gets to 1%.
We'll still probably die either way. Sad.
The apocalypse is upon us. The horizon is blotted out by mushroom clouds. But where's the safest place to be at the end of the world? A global nuclear war is a great time to plan an impromptu vacation and get away from it all. For starters, wherever you are, it's best to get underground as soon as possible to avoid deadly blasts and radioactive fallout. As for countries, first we recommend Iceland, a sparsely populated nation that stays out of most international scuffles, and thus probably won't be a major shelling target. Prefer something warmer but not nuclear death heat? Try New Zealand. This country doesn't even have nukes, and those who don't give are also less likely to receive. It being a fertile agricultural hotspot also means you can continue to grow post-apocalyptic food. And finally, if you don't really mind losing a lot of your creature comforts, head to Antarctica. It isn't technically owned by anyone, and thus nobody will be targeting it. But even if the nukes can't get you, you will definitely be the first to feel the effects of climate change here.
This is the real-life Michael Scofield.
Here's why no jail can hold this man. With an IQ in the top 2% of the American population at the time, Alcatraz was no match for Frank Morris. He managed to design a homemade drill which he and his accomplices used to drill through the ventilation ducts under their sinks in their cells. To mask the sound of the drill, Morris's team played the accordion when drilling. Then, at night, they covered the drill holes with a fake wall. On the night of the escape, they placed papier-mâché dummies on their beds that looked exactly like them. They then climbed through the drilled tunnels and got across the river using a raft Morris had made out of raincoat. No one is sure what happened to the men after they escaped, so comment what you think.
The only explanation is he woke up and chose violence.
This is the crazy story of the man who killed JFK. Everyone's heard the name Lee Harvey Oswald, the assassin who murdered President John F. Kennedy in Dallas, Texas in 1963, before being shot himself by small-time gangster Jack Ruby. But who was this man really? Oswald's father died of a heart attack 2 months into his life, leaving his mother to care for him and his 2 half-brothers, and plunging him into a childhood of poverty. Oswald became interested in politics and military in his teen years, variously being involved with socialist groups and the Civil Air Patrol. He eventually became a U.S. Marine but struggled due to his natural hatred of authority and his growing sympathy toward the Russians. However, after spending some time in Russia, Oswald became depressed and disillusioned with both countries. When he was fired from his job at a Russian-language newspaper, Oswald bought the rifle that he would later use to kill the President of the United States. Whether it was hatred, ideology, or even psychological illness that drove him to commit the murder, we'll never know, but it's likely to continue being a topic of discussion for decades to come.
This might save your life. Check this out.
Here's how to actually escape quicksand. Firstly, don't panic. It's actually impossible to drown in quicksand. Due to its density, humans only sink to about their waistline. The first thing you need to do is wiggle your legs. This will create a pocket for water to trickle down and loosen the sand around your legs. Then lay backwards. And now backstroke, which means using your arms to propel yourself backwards. Your legs should become free and you will have escaped successfully.
There is actually a series for this on Netflix.
Here's everything you need to know about LA's infamous killer hotel. The Cecil Hotel on LA's Skid Row was first opened in 1924. Due to the Great Depression, the hotel was never able to reach the high-class status that its owners originally envisioned, and it quickly became a hotbed for transients and illicit activity. From early on, the Cecil has been notorious for the suicides and mysterious deaths that have happened in their rooms. 16 people have died at the hotel in the near century it's been open. On top of that, serial killers Jack Unterweger and Richard Ramirez reportedly stayed at the hotel during their killing sprees. And the Cecil's bar was rumored to be the last place that Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia, was ever seen alive. In 2011, the hotel rebranded itself to Stay on Main in an attempt to distance themselves from the grim history of the building. That unfortunately hasn't stopped the tragedy. In 2013, a Canadian student named Elisa Lam was found dead in the hotel's water tank. And in 2015, an unidentified man was found dead outside the hotel, presumably having jumped to his death.
Even on his last day, he still made his families and friends laugh.
This man played a pre-recorded message at his own funeral.
Hello? 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 Let me out! Where the fuck am I? Hello? Hello? Let me out! It's fucking dark in here!
Could this be a time travel?
Here's the story of a man who came from a country that didn't exist. In 1954, a passenger going through Tokyo International Airport was held by customs for not having a valid passport. He claimed to be in Japan on a business trip, and he said he was from a country called Torred, which nobody in the airport had heard of. When asked to point to it on a map, he pointed to the region of Andorra on the border of France and Spain. He kept insisting that he was from Torred and he had a passport to prove it, but the customs official were sure that he was lying. When the airport called the hotel he was meant to be staying at, they had no idea who he was. Neither did the company the man was supposedly in town to do business with. His checkbook was also from a bank that didn't exist. In order to investigate further, the Tokyo airport detained the man from Torred in a hotel room with guards posted outside. However, he mysteriously vanished from the room. The man from Torred was never seen again.
Here's what actually happens to your body when you go vegan. In the first few weeks, you may feel especially tired, and you may also discover that foods don't taste the same way they used to. This is because your zinc levels would have taken a hit. However, on the plus side, expect to lose some weight right away, because after switching, new vegans lost an average of 10 pounds over 10 months. While your arteries may become better off, your bones may not. If you're like most people who get their daily calcium from dairy products, then you'll see a dip in your calcium levels.
I really wish that this will never ever happen.
World War III, if it ever happens, won't just be armies of infantry shooting at each other on conventional battlefields. These will be the best weapons for World War III. World War III will enter the new military frontiers of cyber and space warfare. Teams of elite military hackers will likely steal state secrets and devastate the infrastructure of their enemies with coordinated sabotage attacks. Malicious code embedded in the digital frameworks of enemy nations could be activated with a keystroke, causing decades of military planning to go up in flames. In the water, developing new missiles will be the aim of the game. Chinese DF-26 ballistic missiles, known as Guam killers, will leave the atmosphere before returning and dropping deadly payloads of over 3,000 kilograms of explosives onto their U.S. targets. But underwater, American attack submarines pack a nuclear punch, with advanced stealth features that allow them to creep into engagements unnoticed and sink entire fleets of Chinese ships before detection. Who would be the victor of World War III? Pray we never have to find out.
The sense of smell of dogs is unreal.
Here's how your dog might save your life. If ever your dog seems obsessed with sniffing or licking one area of your body, perhaps it's time to go to the doctor's office about it. Dogs have an impeccable sense of smell and can detect the chemical compounds that indicate developing cancers. So stay safe and trust your dog's nose.
He'll absolutely do everything to hurt someone. So disgusting.
Ted Bundy is one of America's most horrifying serial killers, possibly murdering upwards of 40 women. When he was finally caught, he didn't stay caught for long. Because Bundy was representing himself in his trial, he convinced his jailers that he needed to go to the prison library to study law. While there, he jumped out the second-story window and made his escape. After being recaptured, he later escaped once again. After starving himself for several days, he was thin enough to slide through the bars of his cell and climb out through the roof. Sadly, during this incident, he murdered several more innocent women before being recaptured.
Just some additional information for you guys.
These are some crazy things your body does after you die. Even after you technically die, your organs can remain viable for hours. If removed within 30 minutes of your death, your organs can hop straight into a living patient who really needs them. You'll look younger briefly after you die too, as skin tension decreases and your wrinkles smooth away. Also, the skin on your face, scalp, and hands will recede, giving the appearance that your hair and fingernails have kept growing, though this is only an illusion. Thanks to residual reflexes while your nervous system is still powering down, you'll also experience muscle jerks and spasms. These are no fun for the mortician prepping you for your funeral.
Hey, but prayers up for those who didn't survive. May you all find your peace.
The Titanic. It's still one of the most infamous maritime disasters despite occurring more than a century ago. Some were saved on the ship's lifeboats, but what of those who weren't so lucky? Sadly, there are very few happy endings here. Only 706 people survived the incident, many of which were on those too few lifeboats. Almost everyone who remained on the ship were among the over 1,500 casualties of the event. Nobody survived more than 40 minutes in the freezing water. Even many of those who were dredged out would later die from shock. One Asian man tried the Rose method and survived by tying himself to one of the Titanic's doors. He almost wasn't rescued due to the racist attitudes of some of the crew aboard the low rescue ship. It was only due to the protests of other people who'd already been rescued that he was eventually brought on and survived the incident.